Hey everyone, welcome to Be the Change. My name is Lily Mott, and today's episode is about how change comes when you pass the mic. Today is International Women's Day, and I am joined by members of Be the Change Media Network to celebrate. This episode features a conversation between myself, Zarin, the host of This Stays Between Us, Kiari, the host of Shadow and Light podcast, Nika, who is developing a podcast on the network, Tosh, the host of The Imperfect Activist, and Thomas, the host of the Performing Passions podcast. And we also include some clips shared by Tom, who is the host of Spare a Thought podcast, and Eden, who is the host of Sports for All podcast. Lots of podcasts. Throughout this conversation, we discussed our experiences as women, some of the challenges we faced, some advice for young women, as well as some advice for men about how to be more supportive of women in their lives, and so much more. So, without further ado, let's get started with this special episode of Be the Change podcast celebrating International Women's Day.
My name is Nika. I'm a PhD student. I work as a PhD student in Global Health Institute. And this is actually where the inspiration for my podcast came from. Hopefully, my Global Health podcast will be launched soon. And yeah, the inspiration really came from wanting to know more of how I can contribute in what I do by interviewing global health professionals and just by learning from people who have already been through it, and putting out there really interesting things that are happening currently in global health. Research, activism, global health is so many things. And this is really where the inspiration came from, and for young people listening to get inspired from it.
Hi everyone, I'm Key here. And I am the podcast producer and creator of Shadow and Lights. And I also work in the B2B and B2C podcasting space. And I recently have started working in the commercialization of podcasting, specifically in the creator economy. So working with other creators grow their own podcasts and help them get to monetization point and making a sustainable revenue. So that is a little bit about me.
Hi, I'm Zarin. I am a chemical engineering student at the moment. My podcast, however, has nothing to do with engineering. It's a space for girlhood, femininity, in particular, South Asian womanhood. And mostly it's been me telling my own stories, but in future I'm hoping to have more guests tell their stories too.
Hello. Hi. Yeah, I'm Tash. I'm a creative communicator, a climate justice activist from Devon in England. And yeah, my podcast is called The Imperfect Activist. It's all about youth activism, youth organising, whilst also that kind of messy middle between just trying to grow up in a world that's in crisis and just trying to pay the bills and all of that, and kind of reflecting on kind of myself growing up as a kind of climate activist in the climate movement since my early teens, and now kind of in my 20s thinking about just, how do we build movements with care and compassion while still, fighting for a better future.
Hi, my name is Thomas. I am the podcast host of Performing Passions, which is a podcast where I talk to people in the wonderful world of performing arts. And performing arts is my favourite thing in the world. And I have such a huge passion for it. It's a vital part of my life. And I am also a young campaigner for the National Autistic Society, and I'm very passionate about fundraising and other things like that.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you all so much for coming on. I think that this is going to be hopefully one of many of these types of collaborative podcasts where we can all talk a little bit about our own work, but we have this shared theme today of International Women's Day. And I would love to get started. A lot of the people on this call work in male-dominated industries, and that is a lot of industries. As I was going through your backgrounds, it was kind of an obvious thing where I was like, okay, Nika does, and Ki does, and Zarin does. I'd love to get started with Nika, Ki, Zarin. If you would be willing to talk a little bit about your own experiences, how has being a woman shaped your experiences in these spaces? What's one challenge that you've had to learn to navigate?
Because I'm an engineer, it's like engineering at uni, my course is like, there's that 50-50 split of boys and girls. And it's also very diverse, like ethnically diverse as well, because I study at Birmingham, which feels really good because it makes me feel like I'm not the odd one out in a degree. But then when I did my placement year, my entire office was white men, and I was just like, oh, so this is what they mean when they say engineering is male dominated. Okay, I get you. I think the hardest part is this need to constantly prove the fact that you belong here too. Not only like because I'm ethnically like a woman of color and also being a woman in a very male dominated field. It's like I have to constantly prove my worth. And it comes across this spectrum of, am I being too bossy? Am I being too domineering? Or am I being way too soft and too much of a people pleaser and letting people walk all over me? And that gets really difficult, especially when you want to make friends in the workplace too, because you don't know if you're going to be used because you're seen as inferior or if someone genuinely wants to help you grow. So I think that is one of the main challenges of being a female engineer. And I guess because I went to an all-girls school for secondary school, male-dominated just didn't exist. It was female-dominated. So like my physics classes, engineering, chemistry, all of that, just girls. So it felt like male-dominated fields don't exist. I don't know what you're on about. So when people would warn me, yeah, your office is going to be filled with men, I did not believe them. And so I think one thing that I would really love to see for sure is to work in an engineering field, but for my office to be entirely women. And I don't know whether that's impossible, but I know that because I've seen the power of sisterhood and I've seen the power of women working together and building each other up, I'd love to see that reflected in the corporate world too. So that's a bit about me. What about you, Nika and Kiari? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just jump right in here and say yes. I think for me, it's like definitely everything that you said about like the learning the balance, but also for me is like another double-edged sword because, I operate in London, but I'm also American. And so like when I first was introduced here, it was always like, oh, like, why did your country elect Trump? Or like, why did your country do this? And I always got stereotyped. And then I was always stereotyped as like, oh, you must be super rich because you're able to cross the country. And it's like, well, actually, I'm middle class. And then when I found that out, it was like playing like, oh, you're too flamboyant or you're too loud or you're too this. And I just felt like all those stereotypes is like attacking like Black women, that you're too loud, you're too this, you're too that. And for me, I really had to navigate code switching a lot, which I don't think that's a lot talked about enough, where you have to like code switch like how you to deliver yourself in front of certain rooms. And I felt like in corporate settings, like I had to code switch and kind of like simmer down my personality to fit into the mold. Luckily, now that I have that opportunity and I'm blessed to be able to not do that and be fully 100% myself and just be authentically me. But it was times where I had to really navigate like what's too proud meaning, because I always said I'm American, I'm proud of it. I'm Black and I'm proud of it. What is that intimidating to other people because I am that, or is that too much because I'm showing too much and have my heart on my sleeve? So it's very challenging to navigate different cultures and to come from a culture that's so like proud of everything to come to more of a culture that's like reserved. That was like the culture shock of me in navigating that in a corporate setting. Also as well, being told like, I'm a woman, know your place. So it's just like a navigating and learning that I had to do, and a little bit of unlearning that I had to do too, to understand that like it's not coming from a place of ill intent. It's coming from a place of like people may not know any better and may not have been around diverse people or even have considered women as equal, because we do still face that hierarchy of where like women come under men as well.
I just feel everything that both of you have said, especially with the part of balancing yourself, and was also my point of when a woman is really successful, and actually just firm and know what she wants, and she's seen as bossy. And when we lead with empathy, then there's also the woman being too emotional. So that's something that I know that a lot of women navigate in a really hard and uncomfortable way. From my experience, what I wanted to share, what is true, is that I think I've just been lucky kind of going through a safer bubble. I just found myself in a good place doing internships with mentors that were women, and they're just such trailblazers, and they lead like so firmly, and they really, really have everything in place, but at the same time they can lead with empathy. So being led by such women never made me doubt of what I'm capable of. But exactly because I had such a good experience, I want that for everyone. And I just know that's not the case. I just know that's not the case. I've seen it around me. I've heard stories of people in my field of their experiences just feeling so undervalued. For example, I know that a woman wanting to be a surgeon, there's still senior doctors saying that a woman doesn't have the skill to work with the hands to be a surgeon and stuff like that. And yeah, also I've seen examples of researchers that are just very successful, and when a woman is like that, then she has this title of like being a difficult woman. And men will never get that title for being the same level of successful and just knowing what you want. So yeah, I definitely agree with everything. I feel everything that you have said. And something that I also really wanted to highlight when it comes to field of global health is that women are so underrepresented. When it comes to leadership in global health, they definitely deliver so much, such as taking parts in as social care health workers, but not really when making decisions. And that's something that needs to change a lot.
Thank you for that, Nika. That was wonderful. I think that actually leads really well to my next question, which was not one that I originally prepared, but I think that was a really interesting point about female role models and people who have been able to support you throughout your journey. And I think that's a good question for anyone who would like to share. Are there any women who have supported you on your journey to where you are now?
So, there have been lots of positive female role models in my life. Like, my family is one of them. There are lots of strong women in my family, like my mum, my aunt, my grandparents, my aunties, my cousins, and yeah, and also like my friends from my drama group, both at college and outside of college, like they're amazing, especially like with outside of college at Ariel, like all the women there were amazing, like the tutors, the students who are older than me, and the students who are younger than me. When I first joined mainstream drama, I was with like a lovely group of women. They're so lovely. And yeah, I have so many fun memories, like sitting with them at a table. I can go on for ages and ages, but we'd be here till next week. But like lots of things, like just supporting me, helping me out, or even smaller moments like letting me watch a Formula One race with them. I probably did sound like a younger brother asking way too many questions, but that was my first race. And I'm just so grateful to all my female family and friends for being so inspiring, so kind and amazing, as well as lots of teachers as well. They're brilliant. And yeah.
Thank you, Thomas. That's wonderful. Those were some great examples, and I think that's so sweet. I can envision that right now. And for everybody that's just listening to this podcast, all of us were like nodding, smiling. So thank you, Thomas. That was lovely. Does anybody want to add to that or take us in a different direction?
For me, it's very much 50-50. I have had women in my life that have been very supportive. Like, I grew up in a female-dominated immediate family, so all I saw growing up was independent females. You rock the boss, rock the runway, you do whatever you want. Your world is your oyster type of mentality. Like, you can't achieve anything. And I grew up around, like, doctors and professors and healthcare workers and all the sorts, and it was just very encouraged to go out and make the world your own. But on the flip side of that, I have worked, particularly in corporate spaces, where when I had women managers, I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be so supportive because I came from a line of women, whether they were like my mentors or like in my family that was very supportive of me, to come into this and be like, no, I'm not going to support you. And I felt that was like very, very jarring entering that space. Or they play the good it, but behind closed doors, they're like preventing opportunities for you. They're preventing your growth. They keep saying like, you have to do this, or you have to do this, and you have to do this before you can even get like that growth opportunity in leadership. And I learned a way to navigate that was to pivot quickly and to say, you know what, this is not the place for me. I don't come from a place where I knock people down or I knock people down to make myself feel better or to uplift people. So it really just challenged me to align myself with an organization that has the same values and morals than I do, that will put family first when it comes for it, that will, amplify diverse voices, no matter if it's man, woman, or whatever, but ensure that like whoever I work with, whoever I collaborate with, truly believes that and that there is no such thing as tearing down because it's too much in the corporate world. And that's one thing I will change is that we end the tearing down. We actually help support people. And if we can't help support them, then we signpost them somewhere or recommend them somewhere else where they can get the proper support and care they need for that growth opportunities and to have a sustainable career so they don't have to work to live, but they can live to work.
Yeah, I'm just nodding cheeky. That was, yeah, I really agree with that. I think for me, yeah, I mean, likewise, I'm very grateful to have kind of been brought up in a family that, yeah, my mum's very activist like myself and encouraged me to very much use my own voice. But I think I've always struggled with sort of been mentioned a bit of like being called a bit bossy and things like that for my views and for my activism. And, I'm inherently quite a quiet, kind of petite, introverted person who looks quite young for her age. And so it always surprises people when I kind of have quite strong views or radical, quote unquote, radical. I don't think they're radical views. Yeah. And I don't think I would have had the courage to kind of stay being an activist and labelling myself an activist had I not seen other women doing that in the spaces I've been in creator spaces, in the charity sector, in activist spaces. Yeah, I really look up to a lot of women who I probably can't name all their names now, who are doing that and have already been doing it for so many years before me, and really encourage me to speak up in those spaces. And I'm really grateful for that because, yeah, it just reminds me that I'm not the first to do this to a lot of things I'm doing, whatever that may be in my career, yeah, activism, and I certainly won't be the last woman to do that. I'm really grateful for that, and I think, yeah, I try to remember those women when I'm in spaces that, yeah, maybe are more male dominated and things like that. I remember those women that have done it before me and those CEOs that have encouraged me to be in the room and say what I think. Because, yeah, I think we need those women. And, yeah, without them, I don't think I would even be in spaces like this. So, yeah, I'm really grateful for that.
I love that. Before we wrap up, I do want to make sure that we get to this last question that I have for Thomas. And Tom is also going to be answering via voice note. But Thomas, from your perspective, what is one piece of advice you'd give to men who want to better support women in their lives, whether that's creative work, professional spaces, everyday life? Tell me about that. What is your advice to other men?
So, my advice, I would say that listening is very important, but I think it's equally important, if not more important, to understand. I mean, yes, listening's a part of the puzzle, but truly understanding how the women in your life are feeling can really help. It can help you collaborate, what can I do to support you? What do you need from me? And there can even be moments where maybe stepping back or giving them a moment alone could help as well. This can depend on context. And yeah, and also I wanna highlight with women who are neurodiverse, like autism, for example, there are lots of women who might not get their autism diagnosis or things like that, and sometimes they'll mask, whether consciously or unconsciously. For context, masking is like hiding parts of yourself or being someone else. And for my own experience in life, masking can be very draining. So I think it's very important and vital that you allow the women in your life, like regardless if they're neurotypical or neurodiverse, just give them the space to be themselves and show them love and support. That's my main bit of advice.
Thank you, Thomas. Any other advice that anyone wants to share, either for men to support women or for the young women who might be listening? We can end with that. That's kind of the signature Be the Change podcast question, is if you could share one piece of advice for young people who might want to make change. But we could make this more of an International Women's Day special. If any young women out there are listening, any advice that you guys would like to share with them?
I was thinking in terms of advice that I'd give to a man who wants to be more supportive of women. Let's say you're sitting at a round table and you're having a big discussion and your female colleague has made a really good point, but no one's heard her. Just be that person who said, oh, X said this really good point. I think it's really important that we listen to her. And X, can you tell us more about it? Because then you're actively giving her space to talk. You're not taking over her point and you're giving her room to be taking up space in that place where she would usually be dismissed and unheard. So I think that's a really simple thing that men can do in the workplace or in any roundtable discussion. They can really, they don't have to carry around feminist placards or anything. We don't need that. We're okay. Just give us space to talk and raise our voices too with yours. That's all.
Yeah, the listening part, absolutely. So important. Women have a lot to share about what we're going through, and first step is just to listen carefully and have a reflective thought on it. And something also that takes a bit more effort, but it's a very, very important effort to take, is really for men to educate themselves on women's issues, because I know a lot of men that are such good people that want the best for their friends, for their mom, and for their sister. But sometimes because it's not your problem, you're just oblivious to it. And that makes them say stupid things to say. That's the only way I can put it. I'm sorry. Because I know that there's a lot of caring for all the women around them, but sometimes they're just really missing the context. So education here is really, really important. You have to read up on the issues of women around you that you care about. So that's really something that everyone has to put an effort in, to educate themselves on what others are going through.
Yeah, I guess just to add to that, I think it's important for men to know when to pass the mic. I think I really feel strongly about. It's important for them to know when to step back, when to possibly stop talking and start listening. I think even sometimes when perhaps people are trying to maybe create space for women and stuff like that, should it be creating that space is maybe a question I'd ask. And yeah, just thinking about when is the right time to pass the mic. And yeah, I feel that strongly about a lot of things. But also thinking about what I'd say to other young women listening as well, fill that space as well. Even when it feels uncomfy, it's something I'm still working on. Fill the space and take up space. Yeah, even when it doesn't feel comfortable, because change is never comfortable, and you won't be the first one to feel that kind of discomfort. The first woman to feel slightly out of place, slightly, like you shouldn't be taking up that space, and you certainly won't be the last one to feel that. But because you're doing that, it opens the door for other women to be in that room, to be sat at that table. And I think that's so important, to remember that it's always bigger than just you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But I also would say, you don't always have to take up space where you're not welcome. I feel like a lot of times we feel obligated to take up space in rooms that we're not welcome into, and that's necessarily not always the case. You could always just create your own space and feel empowered to do so, and find ways or people to support you in that. So for my advice is take up space, absolutely, like make yourself and presence known. But if you're getting a lot of pushback and it's really draining on your mental or it's really physically affecting you, like it's okay to be like, this space is not for me, and to pivot somewhere where this space will be for you. So it doesn't like affect you in a harmful way as well. Because again, women's health is already undocumented and there's so many factors that can really affect our health. But also for like the men, I think it's just being more mindful of what you say to women when they speak to them about careers or their aspirations or even what they have achieved in life, because you wouldn't say that to like your male best friends, or you wouldn't say that to like your son or your nephew or whoever. You wouldn't say it to like a male counterpart. So why would you dehumanize or make it less than and be like, oh, that's so cute to a woman because maybe she looks petite or she's young or whatever. I think it's just be mindful of what you say to women so we can't come in a world where these characteristics won't matter.
As I mentioned at the start of this episode, we also have a few clips from Eden and Tom to share. This is Eden, who is the host of Sports for All podcast, who shared about her experience growing up doing Taekwondo.
Hi everybody, I'm Eden, the host of Sports for All podcast, which aims to promote inclusivity within sport. I got involved as I've loved sport my whole life and wanted to champion the voices of people who felt underrepresented in the industry. I think being in Taekwondo as a woman definitely was tricky at times, especially with it being a very male-dominated sport. Although at one point I think in my club we did have more females in males, which was really amazing to see. The opportunities didn't always feel the most fair or accessible, and there was definitely prejudice at times, especially in the competition world. Also, more practical things like, for example, the uniforms were white and they weren't very adaptable to women's bodies, obviously brings a lot of challenges. I think the final one I'm going to mention is I think there's not a lot of representation within the sport of women in leadership positions. I do think it's getting better, but I think there is still a lot to go. There is less representation in professional athletes, referees, but also coaches. I think this can be really tricky for younger girls coming up because they don't see themselves often reflected in these roles, so they might not feel like they're within their remit and reach. So what definitely helped me was I had a lot of positive female role models within my club as coaches, other members, but also the parents as well. It was always such a safe and supportive space, and if there were any issues or anything, there was always somebody to turn to. I think also having conversations like this about the challenges and barriers and really reflecting on them and speaking to not just other girls about it, but also men too. I think it can be really tricky, but having a voice and help other people to feel like they're less alone in their experiences and hopefully impact positively down the line and promote people to make changes. I think the one change that I would like to see would be for there to be more opportunities for young women and girls to take on leadership positions and also be given these opportunities. I think in a lot of sports, unfortunately, women and girls aren't taken seriously and there's not as many teams, just for example, because the funding isn't put into those teams. For girls, it's more likely to go to boys' teams. And there's not always that support structure in place. So I think allowing young girls the opportunity to see positive female role models and also be given access to opportunities the same as male teams would be so important and transformational in the sporting world.
And this is Tom, the host of Spare a Thought podcast, sharing his advice for men about how to be more supportive of women.
So one piece of advice that I'd give to men who want to better support the women in their lives, and whether that's sort of in creative work or professional spaces or everyday life. I think the first point is to listen more than you talk. I had this tendency and still have to resist it, where I often find myself mansplaining a lot of things. Your world will open up, and podcasting has helped me do this a lot more, where you actually ask questions and you listen and you learn. That is the sort of first step. And then you will start to gain self-awareness. And that's how you better support the women in your life, because you shouldn't be prescribing answers. It's really important to say, what do you need? Do you need me to listen? Do you need me to take action? Do you need me to support? And that's a massive change that could make a difference in all the women in your lives. And that's something I've learnt often the hard way, but it's very important to remember.
Thank you so much for listening to this International Women's Day special of Be the Change podcast. If you'd like to connect with any of the guests you heard from today, I've linked their social media accounts and how to find their podcasts in the description of this episode. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at Be the Change Media Network. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave the podcast a rating and a comment, because it will help these stories to reach, educate, and inspire more people. And I would also love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Tune in for my next episode, but until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys.